what's going on with the Tide from what you see?
This is a very undisciplined, uncharacteristic, complacent, not hungry team. I mean, I really think that that's what it boils down to. I mean, you talk about the penalty yardage, and again, I'm not gonna belabor a dead horse, because you know what, this is what it is. It's the reality of it, and we're just gonna call it what it is. The penalty at the end of the game that turns a 4th and 7 into a 4th and 22. What did I say after the Malachi Moore situation? If you don't handle this, if you don't approach this the right way, you set the precedent that this kind of behavior is acceptable. Mm-hmm. So what do you get? In the biggest moment of the season, a guy gets a pass broken up, somebody's chirping in his ear. That's part of the game. And then what do? You lose your cool and you cost your team a 15-yard penalty and potentially a chance to win the game. And it's like, what are we doing? Where's the leadership? Like, Jalen Milroe is the quarterback. Kalen DeBoer is the head coach. But, like, where's the leadership? Chris, do you see any leadership on this team? David, do you see any leadership on this team? If you guys do, please let me know.
Not from what we've seen. I think they're always going to be judged by such a standard. And
right.
It's falling really short of that.
But we're not comparing them. We're not comparing them to anything other than what they are right now, which is not a good football team. Mm-hmm. I heard people say this weekend, okay, well, these aren't two great football teams like we thought they were. These are two good football teams. I would say, honestly, these were two not good football teams that played against each other. These guys were almost the same. It's almost like these two teams were staring each other in the mirror.
Yeah,
it was
a rough first half.
It was bad plays. It was missed receivers. I mean, it was fumbles, turnovers. It was everything, and somebody just had to lose, and that was Alabama. Why? Because they're undisciplined and they get themselves in a situation that you can't, like, what are you going to call on 4th and 22? Like, what are you going to do? And then another thing, and this isn't even like on that 4th and 22 play, love Ryan Williams to death. Great player. If you get that block, if you secure that block, you get the first down. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, we can't live in a world where it's like, okay, I just want to make the game-winning catch. I just want to make the game-winning highlight play. Sometimes you got to make the dirty play. Sometimes you got to make the dirty block, the game-changing block, or the game-changing, maybe you're the game-changing decoy or something like that. But Alabama is just, they're missing a lot of key components that would make them a good football team. Like I said, leadership, accountability, obviously the X's and O's, we could talk about that. Jalen Milroe, I feel, is digressing. I feel like their offense is digressing because they're utilizing less people. They're not utilizing Jam Miller, any of the running backs, Justice Haynes. They're not
19 targets. 19 targets for Ryan Williams.
19, that's crazy. And if it's not that, it's just running Jalen Milroe. And then he ran into a defense, a front four, a front seven that wasn't going to let that fly. So there's just a lot of things that Alabama needs to correct. And, I think now Kalen DeBoer and the team, they need to go back to the drawing board and be like, listen, we need to go back to square one. And we gotta reinvent ourselves. We gotta, like, whatever his formula is, whatever his model is, he's got to reintegrate that again and etch that in these guys' brains. And they've got to start to receive that and play to that. And if they do that, they can be a good team. Because I don't even think that this loss completely knocks their chances of getting in the playoffs. Yeah, they still realistically have a chance. Mm-hmm. So you're at a point in the season where you can regather, you can regroup, you can collect yourself and identify the things that you need to do better and then try to be better. That way you can go 1-0 every week after this, because they got a tough schedule. They got some tough matchups that they got to play the rest of the way. So, I mean, that's just where you start.
Chris, I want to get to your rankings in just a second, but Damien, I wanted to ask you one question. Mm-hmm. There were a couple guys who got off the team bus, walked into the stadium with cigars in their mouth.
Oh my God. David, I forgot about that. David, I forgot about it. And honestly, I swore to myself that I wasn't going to get worked up on this pod today talking about this game. But now that you reminded me of that just really threw me for a loop. You know why? Because I know who it was. And those were people who were there when Saban was there. There were people who played for Saban, people who coached for Saban. And I'm just sitting here like, really? Like, really? So now, like, we're just totally throwing everything that made Alabama what it was out the window. We've got coaches walking into the game smoking cigars prematurely. Now I'm sure that's going to be a meme for God knows how long. I mean, what do we talk about? What has Nick Saban talked about? Just, specific to your question, David, what has Nick Saban talked about the rat poison and about feeding into the media and the narratives? I mean, he used to tell us all the time, you guys act like the team you're playing is the greatest team in the world. You respect them. You show up and you play the game the right way. Well, that's smoking cigars in the stadium just walking in off the bus. That's not that. And that's to me, that just shows the entire mentality. That's symbolic of the mentality of this Alabama football team right now. And I think that the results are what they are because of things like that.
It always felt like bad karma because I've covered this game a handful of times, and the cigars they magically appear. Nobody ever even acknowledges that they have them until the game is over. It was interesting. Chris, how far does Bama fall in your rankings, and where does Tennessee move after the win?
Bama is down to number 15 in my rankings, and it is time to really talk about Alabama not making the 12-team playoff, which is not something I at all expected coming into the season, let alone a few weeks ago when they beat Georgia. But they've got Missouri, they've got LSU. Like, it's not hard to see them losing a third game here and then really being knocked out of that picture. Tennessee, I've got up to 9, and we really need to give Tennessee a lot of credit for winning this game. Like, they went out and took that game in the fourth quarter. And Nico has been missing the deep balls for a while now, but they were open.
Yes.
And eventually he was going to start hitting some of them.
The ball he hit to Thornton on the run was one of the best throws I've seen maybe all season. That was crazy.
Yeah. And so you take that defense, which is a really, really good defense, and an offense that clearly has the pieces. It hasn't all come together, but you can see that. That's a Tennessee team that if it all clicks on the right day, could beat anybody in the country, I think. And that is what's different from this Tennessee team a couple of years ago. Yes, the offense was crazy explosive. The defense was not great. They were not physical enough. Now you've got the physicality. You just got to get enough offensively. They did in that fourth quarter, and that's a huge, huge game. Tennessee's playoff chances skyrocketing after that game.